It's good to be back.
It's great to be back.
It's fantastic. The other month, yestermonth, as it were, I took a trip, and this trip was to see a relative of mine, another part of the country, one who does not practice the same religion I do. And one might be misled in thinking that this individual practices no religion, because that's what they might say. But when I visited him, I was shocked by the similarities that I experienced. He took me on a tour of his city, and we're going to bars, and there's kind of a main event thing that's going on, which takes place at a bar. And every bit of his life revolves around the bar, the community on the bar, which bar goers he's speaking to, which ones he's not speaking to, which ones have committed high crimes against the bar scene, so to speak. And it drove home to me that you can't escape religion. Even though he professes no religion, the bar culture becomes that touchstone for him. And I think it's very crucial to understand just the human nature of things. Here I am visiting with him, and he's not hostile to me and my religion, but I'll talk about my thing and he'll be like, but I don't have that kind of faith or whatever. But then the bar is faith for them. This is where they go, him and his group, they go for that, for everything that you would normally see people maybe go to church for. Or if you're Catholic, they go to mass for. That's where life comes from. That's where their sacraments are. That's where they meet. And it's really interesting to see the similarities and how that develops. And I think it's important to remember kind of not only where we came from in terms of nationalities and different customs we have, but remember that we're always driven back to kind of a weekly sort of religiosity, a sort of something that we have to do weekly that is the touchstone for everything else that we do in our week. 7-day cycle is pretty hard-grained in that regard. But also then seeing how strongly people devote themselves to things. And aside to that is just that the less you're aware that you're devoted to something, the more devoted you can be, kind of. But also just, it amazes me, because I was never really exposed to this before, how big bar culture is in this country. It's kind of a new experience for me. And bar culture was not something I had previously really delved into. And to this day, I don't have a very intricate knowledge of all the aspects of bar culture, certainly not from around the world.
So I just had a big thought with what you're kind of talking about, and that a lot of people would take this idea, especially irreligious types, and kind of look at it of you isolating, one aspect that is like religion, as in going into some weekly thing. But the more that you can analyze it, the more that you see that every single point of what would be classified as a religion is something that is had by essentially everybody in one culture or another. So it's not just the weekly visits, it's also the sacraments, it's also the devotional faith to a particular thing. It is every single thing that you could, as a new age atheist, point at as like, oh, this is just a religious thing. Everybody will have something that they essentially have a God-filled hole in their brain that they will fill with something, and it will take all of the same attributes as religion. It's just not technically calling itself a religion, even though it has all of the traits. Specifically honing on what you're talking about of the weekly thing. So many people have this of, oh, everybody's getting together to play a weekend sport or board game. And this is a group of, you're not normally interacting with these people day to day, but they're still fundamentally part of your community. And, let's say you don't have a truck and you need a truck, then, you can ask them for help because, you feel that sort of togetherness, like they're part of, these are one of my people, and they're not directly part of my family, but I still have almost an obligation to them in the same way that they have an obligation to me. And just really, whenever you see any type of particular example of something that you aren't super aware of, like you with bar culture, it's something that when you don't experience it, you could kind of just look at it of, oh, this is just an atheistic nihilistic place, but there just is no such thing as atheism. Everybody has something that they are creating to be a god. Most common thing with people that would most commonly profess that they're not just irreligious, they're not just don't practice, but they actively say that they're an atheist. They will have essentially every modern post 1945 religious devotion to tabula rasa, egalitarianism, anti-racism, any of these types of topics, any of these sort of concepts. You could see the same thing with, climate stuff. There's all of the exact same behaviors that would be instituted. And it's something that when you try to poke and try to talk with these people about these things, you'll find the exact same, if not more, of a I am devoted to this no matter what is said. But with a traditional religion, people are honest that they are taking things on faith. Whereas when people don't have a strict religion, then they will, it's a lot easier for them to say, oh, I'm totally coming to this from a rationalist point, and this is just the thing that has come to me from my pure reason that in this moment I am enlightened by my own intelligence type of scene. So in that sense, you'll find every single aspect of religion in every single subculture, whether it be K-pop, whether it be a bar scene, whether it be Faker fans, T1 fans. They are religiously devoted to him as an entity. Every single scene, if you will, that you'll look into, you can find every single aspect of what would be considered a religion.
That's really interesting that you bring that up. It makes sense in the broader context. I was thinking about I'm not sure how commonly known it is. It was something that I learned about, and it was kind of cool. But the 4 kinds of loneliness, so to speak. Some people divide it into 5, but it's basically like you can be lonely if you don't have a girlfriend, wife, or a woman in your life, essentially. You can be lonely if you don't have a clan, like a group of people that you like fight for. And you'd be lonely if you don't have a nation, like a greater people to be proud of, that like our guys beat those guys. And you're lonely if you don't have a god. You have to have a god to serve. Sometimes the nation one is replaced by like a king. You need a king or something. And sometimes it's the other way around. But it's interesting because of all those types, an atheist can fill the first 3 pretty easily. But there's always going to be the struggle with the last type of loneliness. And so filling that in some regard. I'm reminded now of when I had a family member who was struggling with leukemia and going through that process of dealing with the medical establishment, recognizing that there are levels to this. And so much of what they do is a very religious operation. It wasn't until later where I kind of understood a little bit more. I can't remember if we talked about this in the live episode or not, but the similarities between like Aztec human sacrifice and the American medical system, especially considering leukemia, are very, very tightly tied. Both have like a selection process where a priest has to select a person, and then there's a series of sufferings they have to go through, and then a glorification, then a death, and then all these elevation processes. I think we've covered this in a previous episode, and maybe we'll go in depth in another way, but that was one of those times where you look into it and you go, well, this is just not just clearly religious, but it's tied to like a specific kind of religion, and it echoes this thing from the past.
You have the robes and the priests.
Yes.
The priests and the robes who cannot be questioned. They are who you are taking the information from as gospel.
Yeah.
And whenever you look at somebody who has leukemia and you try to say, hey, here's another way. Here's something that, even if you want to do these other things, here are these additional things that can help you. Or here's just where this thing is just strictly negative for you, that is being told to you by this religious institution. You will be looked at as a heretic, and you will have the same fervor against you as if you just said that the Allah is silly or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in that regard, it's interesting too, because if you even question the diagnosis, a lot of times you can actually be put in prison. I've heard of this happening. Of course, I haven't seen it, so maybe it's not real. But the parents of a child who's diagnosed with leukemia, they said, well, we want to get a second opinion. And that was interpreted as, basically, you're not going to follow up with the treatments, ergo abuse of children. So like, we're going to take your child away and you guys are going to prison for this. And there's definitely a lot of pressure in that to follow through when the priest in the robe says, you're the one, you've been chosen. There's no, hey, can we check again? Maybe get someone else to look for the special spots on the special scan. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you got to really be careful of interacting with that. But it's interesting to me that one is more overtly religious in the sense that the people who are supposedly conducting the science behind it can't defend any of their findings, much like in the nutrition space and to some degree in the fitness area. You think of science-based lifters, and obviously some names come to mind. A lot of these people who are like, oh, well, you have to do it this way and that way because science, invoking science as its kind of own little thing.
As a thing that is unquestionable, that like this is where the studies are, and just it's famous that fitness is just the thing that's impossible to really get strict scientific studies on.
Especially we're talking about, oh, this exercise yielded 8% better results than that exercise. And the margin for error is like, 7.5%.
Yeah. Whereas you look at the people in fitness who are the most scientifically minded are the bodybuilders doing, random Chinese peptides. And that they're very strict in tracking things. They take things, one at a time. It's like, all right, I know everything is equal, and then I'm just going to add this one singular thing to it and then see what the results are. And they all are also just very good at documenting things. So those are people that are taking things in an actual scientific lens. They're infinitely more scientific than the people that are religious in their devotion to a study says this, therefore let's go.
Yeah, I was a part of the devotion to papers. It's kind of a phrase that I have used in the past, is something I was into myself when I was very into the physics space, specifically astrophysics. Because in that space, there's no proofs. Not that there's no proofs mathematically. Everyone can make their proofs. But what I mean is simply you just wouldn't actually know because you can't run the actual simulation in astrophysics a lot of times. Astrophysics and theoretical astrophysics are like this because it's all fake.
Yeah.
But the devotion to the papers, it's like, oh, well, the paper says this. Well, it's peer reviewed. These kind of terms are spells in and of their own right to kind of like get past any kind of discernible questioning of these antics, really. And I would call those more overt religions, because when it comes down to it and you ask these people about it, they are taking some things on faith. They have to, oh, well, it was reviewed by peers. That itself is an act of faith, because you're saying, well, people who are of the same level as the guy who wrote this paper reviewed it. So then it must be right.
Yeah.
Well, there's no appeal to authority, obviously, there.
Yeah, this is me getting specific, actually, naming somebody directly, is Mike Israetel.
Yeah.
The big thing that's kind of happened with him, to where people are actually looking at his PhD, which is just the worst thing you could possibly do. And seeing that not only is it riddled with a whole bunch of just, first grade errors, 400, 500 spelling mistakes, syntax mistakes, et cetera, but the conclusions don't match, the citations don't match what they're being invoked for. And essentially the entire thing is of zero value, doesn't provide anything novel, which is what a PhD is supposed to do.
It is supposed to be novel. Yeah. It's actually more important, in my experience anyway, that a PhD be novel than that it be accurate.
Yes.
I would say.
Yeah. And that's also the thing, is that if it's novel, it's in something that, doesn't have any other information about it. So how would you even be able to tell, oh, this thing is actually legit? Because even under the own idea, you wouldn't be able to cross-reference it with anything else for the specific novel claim that's tested. But to the Mike Israetel point, it is not like he's going to some bum university that is not legit. It's a perfectly legit, valid institution that people hold in high regard, that hold university is an institution in varying degrees of regard. It's a valuable institution. And then people will look at that and kind of just look at it in isolation, like, oh, it's just this one little instance. But in reality, this just happens with every single. It is something that is rife in the entire field. May not be the same level of syntax mistakes, but in terms of the core fundamental basis, it is essentially just a credibility laundering scheme, to where people don't care about actually doing the work. They care about being able to be called doctor.
Yes.
I am Dr. Mike Israetel. And then you look at Dr. Mike Israetel, he'll have famous clips of him just saying, like, all right, guys, God is just not real. And, all of the smartest people agree that, he's not real. People that are much smarter than you think this. All of the high IQ people say this. And I have a doctorate. So therefore, like, just trust me on this, bro. Why are you questioning me when I am a doctor? And that's what he is famous for doing for essentially every single claim that he'll make, in that the scientific bodybuilder archetype that I was talking about, they will engage with these things in a way that they're actually engaging with the fundamental core points that are being made, and they're perfectly willing to defend what they're actually trying to talk about. Whereas in the credibility laundering schemes, it goes back into, this person says this thing, they have their credentials. This person, it doesn't matter what their arguments are, because they don't have the same credentials. And this is just something that is fundamentally a religious devotion that people that have gone through the rituals, and people that have gone through this cycle, are the priest class. And the priest class cannot be questioned. And in this sense, it goes back into that it is more religious than religious thinkers, because you ask a lot of people who are deep into their theology, they love talking about their theology. And they love actually getting strict, in-depth talk and being able to justify what they think about from pure logos. Whereas the religious PhD advocates, they don't do that, because it's also just fundamentally going back into being dishonest about what it is.
Yeah, I think a really good way to kind of just drive home that point is that I had an argument with some individuals online concerning ketosis and specific stuff concerning that. And they, I said one thing, they said another thing, and they said, well, prove it by doing X. And so I go and I did X. I conducted a study on myself, as suggested. I'm like, this shows what I thought it would be. And then they're like, okay, well, then show us Y also. And I did the Y one as well. And the interesting thing about that whole deal is I did the things they asked me to do, showed the data. They weren't convinced. And then I myself went back and I was like, I think actually there's probably some holes in this experiment. I could probably do some other things better. But they never poked holes in my experiment. Their whole thing was simply, you must be wrong because that goes against what we believe. Mm-hmm. And this is in the fitness space. Compared to, like, if I argue with some of my good friends from the Roman Catholic Church, those guys may get under my skin, but they're not getting under my skin nearly in the same manner as the person who's like, we can't discuss your point. It goes against what we believe. Like, that's not discussion.
It's taboo. It's a third rail topic. It's not something that is allowed to be talked about, because this is fundamentally a part of culture.
Yes.
Is that it is a point that, like, James True brings up, is that culture is an agreed upon set of lies, and that there are just things that everybody has to accept. And if you don't accept them, and if you're like, hey, that's a little weird, why do we all, go to these people with special robes and do this thing?
Why do we wake up an hour later?
Why do we wake up an hour later? This is just something that's kind of not okay. Then it's like, you shouldn't have talked about that. You shouldn't have brought that up.
Yeah.
And now we have to excommunicate you. You have to be exiled from the church.
Yeah. The church of whatever happened, whatever belief it is that's third rail. And I think on the note of, culture being an agreed upon set of lies, there is a concept that I think I'm right in saying I've pioneered, which is simply that your relationships tend to determine your reality. What I mean by that is that if your good friend tells you something, you kind of accept it to be true. And if someone you have no relationship with tells you the opposite, you are very unlikely to believe that person, even though from like a cosmic level, these are both just two people saying something.
Mhm.
And one may not have more reason to lie than the other. But you're going to choose to believe your friend because that's your friend.
Mhm.
So your relationship with that person kind of determines your reality. You're going to believe your friend. Now, we've all had situations where we have to confront our friend on something. It's like, oh, he's really in the wrong here, right? But again, if you are in the type of relationship where confronting that person will result in terminating the relationship, then you're still guided by whether or not you want to terminate that relationship. And these discussions are had all of the time about, oh, I'm not sure I can tell such and such this thing. They might just never speak to me again.
Mhm.
And so when we get a culture like this, and when you're bombarded by the media
Mhm.
constantly to think certain things and to think that everyone else thinks certain things, then you're kind of handicapped in your own brain. You can't go and challenge other people's view because once you know that that's a taboo topic, it's a third rail. You may not want to talk to your friends about it. This is kind of an interesting thing about the internet age is instead of talking to your friends about it, you go online and talk to strangers about it, and they will give you the third degree treatment. They will give you that, look, you can't bring this up or we will get rid of you, getting kicked out of communities and things. And it's a failure to read, part of it.
Mhm.
But a lot of it is simply that most people wouldn't take those kind of risks with people they know
Mhm.
because they don't want to ruin relationships. So that's how your reality is determined by the relationship. And this ties back into what we said in episode 1. If you don't have anyone around you, then you don't have a reality. If you don't have anyone around you to bounce ideas off of and talk to and mention things about, you don't have a reality at all. You are living in a total fantasy world that can change on a whim. You can be like, oh, everything's about this one thing. And then the next day you can be like, well, everything's actually about this other one thing. And without anyone around you to be like, wait a second, yesterday it was this and now it's this. Which is it? You can just go from thing to thing to thing like that and you just lose your mind.
Which also goes back into, the young man's game, trying to just talk with everybody around you about the thing that is most interesting to you, or trying to, let's say, somebody holds this thing in really high regard. This particular event is something that is really important to their foundational worldview, that it's really important that, these people went to this place at this time. And like, you could just destroy the relationship by trying to talk about that, or you could not. And that is a choice that you can make. And that's just something that you need to make the decision on of what is important to you. Is this relationship important to you? Knowing that you may have an aspect of a disconnected reality with them. And you're often going to have a disconnected reality with a lot of people. And then it just naturally aggregates to what are the things that are acceptable to talk about and what are the things that are not acceptable to talk about. Because one person has to budge. If one person says, oh, this thing did happen, other says this didn't happen, one person has to accept that, oh, we're just going to talk about this thing in the way that this person accepts it.
Yeah, you'll see, the viewer might not see, but you and I will see this all the time when we're talking to people and you're trying to make headway or make connections or talk to people. A lot of times you just kind of have to accept some of those things, make the decision in your own mind of, is this really important to tackle right now? Is this something I can tackle later? Or is it something that if I cede it right now, meaning concede, like if I allow this to pass, is that forever going to mar the relationship? And sometimes you can just change how the relationship develops by stopping people right at the pass and being like, I actually don't believe that thing. And they will treat you differently and they may adjust their conversation to accommodate you. And it's not necessarily that it's about asserting your will, but there's a victory in the sense that you're free to now talk. we spoke a little bit about this, just that if you don't give the credence or the leniency for anyone in your friend group to say a particular topic, everyone may assume it's taboo. But if you go there and say, hey guys, we're talking about this, well, maybe everyone else wanted to talk about that all along, but they were just like too scared to. And it's the same way. When you meet someone new, drop the breadcrumbs and talk about this thing or that thing, and you will find out the truth. But it all goes back to kind of understanding the religiosity that all people have.
Mm-hmm.
So the hardest to figure out is, and the easiest to figure out is the atheist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have daddy issues, so you got to deal with that. Mm-hmm. But then when people say, oh, I don't have a particular religion, it's kind of difficult in that now you don't know how to interact with them. You have to find their sacred cow, so to speak, because I've never met anyone who truly had no sacred cow. I've met people who are like, oh yeah, I'm a blah blah biker from the blah blah days, and you know, nothing offends me, and I this or that, and I'm just like minor, maybe considered racist remark, and he's just like, whoa,
oh, that's too far. That's too far.
Yeah, and it's like, bro, you were supposed to be Mr. Biker guy who doesn't care about anything, but that's a bridge too far.
Yeah, that's the topic that is religious, and that's the one that cannot be touched.
Yes.
And somebody who, just an example in my life, somebody who is considers themselves very atheistic, and also comes from a family who is religious. So there's the disconnect there, one might say. When discussing the topic of raw milk, it was something that almost was brought up in a aggressive way in order to almost try to have that combative experience, to try to like break this thing up. Because I understand that to them, anti-raw milk is their religion. Their religion is that raw milk is bad. And they pray to the sacred cow of, you have to
pasteurize milk.
Yes. You have to boil this cow before you have it in a golden bowl torture ceremony. And so me, just like I, at one point in my life, probably would have been the person who would have, pushed that for just the detriment of everybody, because we don't have to have the relationship in that sense of, I can talk to so many other people and I get everybody else around me to accept that raw milk is good. I will bring raw milk to them. I will give them raw milk. I will take them to the farmer's market and then we'll get raw milk together. And I don't need these people to be involved with that. So as soon as that's, brought up and it's like hey, Yasukeh, David, defend this. And this is the worst thing you could possibly defend. And you are just like literally having a mustache right now. If you defend this. So then it's just like, oh yeah, I will just never talk about this point. Like, yeah, just sure. We never have to discuss that ever again, or any of those topics ever again. Which is just also understanding what is the religious faith that people have, and whether it is something that you're like, do I want to convert this person into being part of a different faith? Even if it's not explicitly Christianity, it could just be, hey, don't kill babies.
Yeah, I feel like a really simple one is, I mean, obviously I'm a Christian, so it's hard for me to argue morality outside of it. But the big one is, to me, the most defining issue of our time is stop killing babies. Like, that seems like that's the issue that should be only talked about in terms of politics. And so that is like a way better sort of religious third rail thing to go on, in my opinion, if you're going to get involved in that, or if you want to, whatever your thing is. If you're an atheist and you're like, oh, I got to find my religion is, what you should actually convert to is protecting unborn babies. That's like a great one. You don't have to be a Christian, but now we've informed you have a religion. You should convert to protecting unborn babies religion.
Yeah, because it is also just like when you get into a very specific point, then it's something that can be argued about in a way that people understand.
Yeah.
Because if somebody has zero conception or they have an active denial of anything metaphysical from existing, you can everything that it comes with unborn babies and discussing everything about that is things that are able to be understood from their framework, and it's just not ever talked about with them from that framework. And so it's also that when you understand the religion that somebody partakes in, you understand the language that they speak.
Yes.
Because every religion comes with a language. It's kind of a thing that's just intrinsically tied together, which is also how, you can see, a 1 minute conversation, a 2 minute conversation with somebody and know exactly what religion they are, even if they don't actively espouse their particular religious belief. But you can just tell from the word choices, what they say, how they say it, what words they're pausing on.
Yeah. I have a perfect one for this. Absolutely perfect. So me and my boss going to fix a particular issue on this roof. And we roll up and it's a school. And in front of the school are two priests of the order of special education. So one is a doctor and the other is a psych evaluator. And they're evaluating disabled children in like a little area there when we're coming by. So we go past their little fenced in area where they're playing / evaluating these children. And we set up our ladder. And then I'm holding the ladder so my boss can go up and do what he needs to do. And the woman, who's a psych eval gal, she follows the child that she's following over to me because he comes over to me and he's asking me questions. What are you doing? Why are you getting up on the roof? I don't think you should do that. That's dangerous. And excuse me. And she says to him, oh, leave him be. He needs to help his friend off the roof. And so people are going to really think I'm reading into this, but I'm not. The choice of the word friend is kind of silly. She had seen my boss giving me orders. He's like, hold the ladder. I'm going to go up. That's a boss thing, right? She could have said he's holding the ladder for his boss. And even if she didn't want to do that, she could have used the word that she uses when referring to people she works with, which I'm sure is colleague. Because if you work in that environment, you say, this is my colleague, right? Why wouldn't she use colleague? And the reality is because she doesn't believe I'm working. I'm not doing the super important job of psychologically evaluating this poor disabled kid. Ergo, I have no value. Like my work is so below. She could have also used the word coworker, but to her mind, coworker is someone she works with.
Yeah.
So instead, me and my boss, our relationship is friend. And it's the same as USSR calling everyone comrade. We're not going to have, any titles now.
Any hierarchy of roles?
Yeah, exactly. But now comrade general, comrade doctor, comrade tech, comrade peasant, and so on and so forth. The same way the friend is being used here literally to demean myself and my boss to make us less than them. Because if I was, if I was an actual important person, I would be called colleague, or coworker, or one of these other words that she reserves for doctors and such. And it's just so obvious, just the point you're making, the tiny words that people use, you can immediately tell what this person's religion is. And I can't even imagine the hellfire that would have come my way if I had been like, I think psychologically evaluating children is actually damaging to them. I can't even imagine what would have erupted in my face when that's like not even annoying to most people.
Yeah, so that's also another thing is that, they're perfectly fine belittling your work however much they want to.
Yeah.
And then you can't belittle their work whatsoever because they are like, you cannot commit heresy.
Yeah.
Why would you be able to commit heresy?
Yeah.
Which is also just a revealed preference of the hierarchy of what are the most valuable priests. In that teachers, nurses, firefighters are typically, like I would say, top 3, maybe top 5. There's a couple other that might be in there, but top 5 of the highest priestly caste orders. You can never say something negative about a teacher, they always deserve more pay. They always deserve this thing, that thing, and they have the hardest job, and they are playing the most important role in society, despite it being, even within the concept of like college, it is just the easiest major to do.
Yeah.
And if you can't make it as an actual job that does actual productive things, then just change your major to becoming a teacher, and then you're good.
Yeah. I think also, so the town I'm in, I live in a rural town, and the town I'm in, we actually have a hospital. It's not actually in my town. It's a little ways down the road. That's country speak for like 20, 30 miles.
Yep.
And so at this hospital, there's all these RNs, all these different medical people, right? And we have tons of medically adjacent people, paramedical people. Our whole town is just filled with these because, we're such a small population. The hospital is such a huge job, so to speak. So I interact with these people all the time. When I'm going in early for work, if I'm at 5:30 and I'm going to the 7-Eleven or something to get a cup of coffee or a yerba, I see the nurses there because those are the other people that are also getting up at that time, right? And these people are terrible people. They are just terrible people. I wouldn't want to interact with these people, let alone have them administer healthcare to me at all. But one of the big things that's happened, and I'm pretty sure this is universal. I don't think it's local to my area. But so in the 70s and 80s, the scrubs were something that never left the hospital. The scrubs stayed in the hospital. The whole point was they were washed in-house and they were clean. And in my town, the nurses wear their scrubs everywhere they go, no matter what. And there's no way that they're as sterile as they were if they were just washed in-house at the hospital. These people just wear scrubs off-duty, doesn't matter. They're just, their whole outfit is scrubs. And it does kind of tell, there's no reason to wear scrubs. Maybe I'm wrong on this one. I know a few people in the medical industry. Scrubs aren't particularly comfortable. They don't particularly fit well. They're not enjoyable. They have drab colors. There's no reason really to wear them out and about to do errands, except if you want the recognition and the added oh, this person's a hero or something. They're wearing their priest colors.
Yeah, it is just this robe has been given this validity, this validation, which is often something that's talked about in general with science, when they did all of the good things, like getting us to the moon and making nukes.
Yeah.
All of the real stuff that they've done. Now, all of a sudden, science is laundering that credibility from its own previously super legit things that they did. So now people just say, oh, science, and then therefore it's, good. In the same way, these nurses are have been given so much of a value, of a role in society. You will see so much media talking about, dirty cops, this guy's taking a little bit of money under the table to let a gang member do their gang member thing, or the mafia do their mafia thing. You'll see this in Batman a lot, all these corrupt cops and everything. But you'll never see anything other than nurses being the ultimate moral people that always want to do the best thing by their patient. They're always, super tired working these 30-hour shifts. And
30 hours in a day.
Yeah. And there'll be all the doctors and nurses coming down the hallway, and then you'll have all the Marvel characters saluting them.
It's funny you should mention that. I know you're not a Tarantino fan, which is really respectable. I unfortunately am graped, so I've seen a lot of those, and it's in the one where the nurse is a really bad dude, but he can't be a nurse, so he's an orderly instead. And then it's okay. Orderlies are fair game, which I find hilarious because orderlies are basically nurses. But it's but if they're in an old folks home, they're evil. Or if they're a special care facility, they gotta be evil. Where's the connection there to where it's you work in a hospital, you're great, but if you work in a coma care area, you're evil. What?
Yeah, and you would never see something that disrespects the religion of these people being the ones that are the ultimate good. And Yeah, which also just really goes into everything has become about these status symbols, these status games. You could say that this has been a thing, elsewhere in terms of people, wearing rosary and very publicly, praying and doing everything outwardly, displaying to the world, I am part of this faith. Whereas you see just everything in society has become more religious. Not in terms of, literal belief in a deity, but everything is becoming more like a religious mind of thinking. It's just all been outsourced into all of these other different areas of just priests that just can't be questioned.
Yeah. Something I've talked about in the past is that if you went back to 1850, maybe a little earlier, you would ask people, you could ask people all the time, hey, are you a moralist? If you don't know, a moralist is someone who believes that the world ought to be governed based on morals. In 1850, you'd probably get maybe 80% of the population say, no, I'm not a moralist.
Mhm.
I don't think the world should be governed based on morals. It should be governed based on, what I can do, how I can best comfort myself. And this really gives rise to, Darwin, when he's in the 1880s, this is the world he's born into, is a world without moralists. And then Freud also is writing about this a little bit later on. And not Freud, excuse me, Nietzsche.
Mhm.
Sorry. Nietzsche writes about this as well. And he laments how basically the society is, in his mind, godless. God is dead. No one is worshiping God and no one's doing this thing. And you fast forward to the modern day, and you would not meet a single person, I don't think, that would not say they're a moralist.
Mhm.
And what's the difference? Why is it that back then everyone said, nah, I'm not a moralist, and now everyone says they're a moralist? And the difference is, back then, being a moralist meant you had to be a Christian, because that's the only place morals come from, is from like the Anglican Church or the Catholic Church. You pick a church, but they're all Christian churches. And then nowadays, you could be a moralist without a deity.
Mhm.
You don't even have to have a god. You don't even have to be Muslim. Like back then, you could have been a moralist and maybe been a Muslim, and people would have been like, oh, that's scary. But nowadays, you don't need any particular deity to be a moralist. You can be, I have my own specific set of morals I've conjured for myself. And then that means you can be religious about it, because now you're not governed by a sense of like what I can do or what would make me happy. You're governed by your own little set of morals. And that in itself leads to religious actions.
Yeah, because also when it's not based on anything whatsoever, there's nothing concrete that can always be referred back to. It is something that is changeable to what is convenient.
Yeah.
And that is something that happens both on an individual level and a religion-wide level, to where, there will be certain talking points or certain ways of going about something. And then it's like, this way isn't really converting a lot of people. So let's shift over to this other way of referring to it. Going back into the idea of last episode, when we're talking about just accepting things getting gradually worse and worse over time, where a certain argument that is used now to justify, unborn baby stuff, killing, would not be acceptable 50 years ago.
Right.
But it is acceptable now because there has been a gradual increase, a progression, you might say, in the level of argumentation, that the argumentation contradicts the argumentation from before, and it's just based on what advances the ultimate religious cause the most. It's not about having a coherent set of principles, a coherent thing that can ultimately be followed back to. It is very Machiavellian in a certain sense, in that it is referring to just what is the thing that is going to give us the most power.
Yeah, you can look at like Darwinism, for example. And so Darwin himself would say, the entire theory of evolution hinges on the proof of spontaneous generation, right? And then what happens is people go, okay, well, we can't prove or disprove spontaneous generation because we can't observe it, so we can't prove it. And you can't prove a negative. You can't prove it doesn't happen. So we're just going to let this one sit on the table for now. And instead, we're going to go ahead and build on top of it like it was the real deal. And now modern day evolutionists will turn right back around and say, there's no such thing as spontaneous generation, even though their whole tower is built on that. And it's the same kind of gradual progression. Once people have accepted certain aspects, and you can move on. Another way that kind of language changes is like, I'm not the first person to bring this up, and it's kind of humorous and kind of not. But like, when was the last N-word said on like a public TV station and it was okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there had to have been one point in time where like one day it's okay and the next it's not, more or less. But what you find is that if a word describes a particular group of people, that's one thing. But if a word describes an action, that action can always be revealed to be bad. So like, putting aside the concept of generalizing people based on stereotypes, which is kind of a different topic. If you're going to say like, oh, we're murdering people, and then people figure out what murder means and they're like, I'm not for that, then you can always change it. Like, actually, we're killing people. It's not murder, it's killing. And then it's like, oh, okay, don't really know what that means. Then eventually you find out what that means. Then it moves to the next word, which is like, oh, it's euthanasia. Like, what? I don't know anything about the youth in Asia. Like, I don't get
exactly.
it. And you progress like this, chasing this word around. Some people were lamenting just not long ago that they can't hear the word youths anymore without being just immediately assuming like terrible things.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not their fault that now this word that is innocuous is horrible.
Same thing with retard.
Yeah.
Which is something that's okay to say now. At one point was, I would have maybe censored myself at some point, but it was always like a moron, dumb.
Yeah.
Whereas the people that today say that retard isn't okay to say, they will say some other word that means the exact same thing as retard. They're trying to convey the exact same concept, but it's just that this word is taboo, so they use something else that means the exact same thing.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine was in a music community. He was just trying to talk about where to move the drums. And if you know anything about like drums or automotive tuning, you advance or retard. And this is just a common usage. And like, one of his commissions was like, what do you mean? Do you want the drums to be retarded? And he's like, well, do you want me to retard the kick? And he's like, and it's just like, you get caught up in these things. But the words just keep moving. They keep moving, and it's difficult to stay abreast of it sometimes. But it is another one of those things that's going on in the background of censoring your language. And since we're post 2012 and you're censoring to both everything and nothing at the same time, it's just exploding brain kind of fragments that are going on in terms of like, how can you survive going anywhere and doing anything if you always feel like everyone's watching you, as we've talked about in the past. Everyone has a problem with everything you say. And if you don't push the boundaries on everything that's said, then you're a wuss and not a cool guy. Like, how do you function?
Yeah, which goes into that, like, there's not really any way to actually properly express yourself as a person authentically without essentially pushing these boundaries, so that you're always in a position to where you never really feel like you can do anything, which just does make you normalize being muted to where you essentially just become nothing. You have no individuality. You're not an actual person because you aren't allowing yourself to essentially be a heretic and espouse things that are true to what you believe is true. And in that sense, it is just another one of those things, just like with the health topic, just like with essentially everything else, it just becomes that white noise that just makes you become not actualized, not realizing being a authentic person, which goes into a point that talked about a little bit before. It's just like the whole, a point that Jordan Peterson would bring up is just the idea of, oh, if you just get 1 billion more people, then eventually you'll run into a super genius. When, like, assuming history is, as stated with history, Athens has, maybe 100,000 people,
right?
And then develops all of these really high quality thinkers, which shows that it's not just make a whole bunch of new brains and then you'll eventually get it. You actually need to have a culture that cultivates that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. The more we learn about IQ, because I know eugenics has been held back by like 60 years by a certain mustache gentleman. But the concept of improving your genetics with the idea of a superior outcome, both intellectually and physically, is something that no one is opposed to, which is interesting to me. No one's like, we shouldn't have better genetics. But every marker that we can see that indicates like intelligence levels, it is largely both genetic and epigenetic, meaning you can make smarter and smarter people if you give them the nutrients and give them decent genetics to start with. That person has the potential to be high IQ, but then they still need nurturing to reach that full potential IQ. And then that person's children have a chance for an even higher climb up the ladder. This ties into a bigger concept, which is something we talked about, breaking the cycle of history in your mind, not viewing history as cyclical. Instead of viewing history as, things go in a circle, it is actually a steady climb up, unless there's a pretty active intention to sabotage. Technologies don't necessarily like rise and fall. And it's the same way with general genetic prowess. You are naturally inclined to seek out a mate who is genetically well matched for you. This is something that's built in. What happens then when you are brainwashed into thinking you want something different is you make terrible choices with genetics, and you end up with worse and worse genetics as you go. It's another one of those things where they're just trying to sabotage. But the general thought process here that I'm driving at is, it's not a numbers game. It's not a have a billion more humans, you get a super genius. It's start cultivating the culture that promotes thought, that promotes nuance, and promotes there's another word there, basically new things, further into the unknown. And you will develop these people who think about things. One of the common misconceptions is that like Socrates came out of a vacuum. I know everyone doesn't believe that. Everyone knows he has teachers and all these things, but we tend not to think of, we just think, well, he had like these two great men above him who taught him. But there was an entire system built around that, and there were many great men around that idea of thinking. And now we get to have that for free.
Yeah, in that sense, it's kind of taking for granted what you actually have, and then what you also don't have, which are things that you might not even know that you don't have, because you don't even know that you're actually having the capability of having that, or that these are things that were completely normalized, like in the last episode, being able to not lock your car, something that just people had. And that gives you much more ability to have closed loops, to where you can actually use your brain power for things that are actually grander and greater, and being able to cultivate new things, because it doesn't matter how much IQ you have if it's not being directed anywhere, or if it's being directed to all of these completely wasteful funnels, like all of the smartest people being told that, if you want to cultivate your smartness, you got to get a PhD, you got to go in academia, which, as we've just talked about, you're doing literally nothing. Like you're just cutting rats open and then injecting cocaine into their brains to study addiction, when, the scientific bodybuilders have already figured all of that stuff out.
Yeah.
And so you're not doing anything useful, you're not doing anything new, but it's essentially just a tool to take the smart people, to take the people that do have some level of desire to do things, and then funneling it into something that is entirely useless. There's also another point that kind of wraps into a couple things that you've said, which is that both the race realists, the people that will look at a whole bunch of studies, populations, look at this thing, that thing, look at twin studies, look at all of these things with genetics to show that, genetics is a very large marker for outcomes in life. And with something kind of recently, they essentially just backdoored into the exact same worldview and the exact same outcomes as the atheist. And this goes into a specific thing that there is, you could consider it something like CRISPR, but essentially you can, there has been some group that has been able to take embryos and then look at their sequencing, and you can take, you and your partner and get a baby that is 3 inches taller than the average on aggregate, or 10 IQ points higher than the average on aggregate. And this is something that's been able to consistently being shown, but they're really just backdooring into also another just straight up genocide.
Yeah. What if we just kill more babies?
Yeah. And they're doing the exact same thing that the atheistic people always want, kind of the Gattaca future.
Yeah.
To where there is that level of, weeding out bad genetics. And just because it's not framed in the exact same way that the Mustache Man framed it, therefore it's okay. And even though they would deny the same justifications or the same reasons that the race realist comes at it too, they both ultimately come to the same conclusion, and they both desire the same outcomes, even if they're coming at it from completely different viewpoints.
Yeah, one of the interesting things when you showed me the Gattaca, because I had not seen it till you showed me, was that, watching this movie, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. It's, good movie and all that. But it's like, what a horrible world to live in.
Mm-hmm.
And it astonished me to go online and find there were people that were like, I wish I lived in Gattaca. What is wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
And it should be obvious. And of course, I don't know what the makers of the film really desire in terms of that kind of a future. But then when something like this comes along, we would expect to see kind of the Terminator-esque reaction to AI. And instead, it's just a full-on embrace. Like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. Can't wait to have my bioengineered baby at the expense of hundreds, if not thousands, of little other babies.
Yeah. And people will look at the movie and they will see all of these things that are negative heartstring tuggings of, the people that are God's children, aka just normal babies that are born naturally, are all of a sudden just lower tier class of society. And they will look at that and be like, oh, that's just such a horrible thing. Like, I would never do that. And then in the exact same vein, they're justifying the exact same thing that would logically come to that outcome, is that if you do want super CRISPR babies to become the norm, there will be a stratification in society.
Yeah.
And this will just be a natural outcome of that case.
Yeah, I think you can't really avoid the direction that goes. And just in terms of stepping back from the whole concept of the CRISPR baby or Gattaca in general, the interesting aspect about this is what you kind of said at the beginning, which is the race realists wrapping around to the atheist position. When you don't have any kind of solid foundational thoughts or morals, you can end up in all kinds of different worlds. And especially now, talk about the post-2012 world, where every thought is okay and wrong at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You can have these kinds of things happen. There's a reason we refer to it as clown world, because it's just, honka. Like, what? How do you get from one position to the other? There's no coherency and there's no thought behind it. And so when you're reading about this stuff, it can be very discouraging sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think taking even one step back to, the individual who is maybe growing up in a city surrounded by people who are essentially echoing whatever the media says, it can be even more discouraging for that person because they can't actually talk to someone about that.
Mm-hmm.
All the places culturally where young men would get encouragement are kind of being taken over or systematically pushed out of existence. And this would include some of those institutes we might classify as the religious, because remember, religion does hate competition.
Mm-hmm.
So, even though you have the religion of the nurses and you have the religions of the science situation, right? Or firefighters, whatever you have, they are kind of at enmity with some of these other religious institutes, especially if any of those have a byproduct of having some sort of intergenerational link that helps stabilize young men, because that is kind of the goal, is to destabilize them.
Yes, and before I forget this thought, just want to bring it out there, is that there's this book written by this atheist, full-on atheist, scientifically minded person, and essentially just looking at what factually has happened with things that Christianity has brought upon the world, in that having an actual set moral principle, moral foundation, is that everywhere in the world before Christianity committed infanticide, not abortion, not embryos, just 30%, 50% of babies just being left out into exposure to where they are just left out to die. And that was a normal thing that just happened in the world. And it happened everywhere in the world until in any particular place, Christianity was just like, nah, we're not going to do this. And that's just where having a set moral foundation, moral principles that everything is derived from will have a coherency. Whereas it's kind of funny that anything that doesn't have a basis like that, that is solid, set, foundational, that they all kind of wrap around back to the same things. And that, don't have Christianity, you're suddenly going to find some way to wrap around back to infanticide one way or another. It's just going to be a thing that happens.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think you can't necessarily understate how much we take for granted in terms of impact of Christianity just in our culture, and where we would all be if there was no Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regard, I think it's important to always remember kind of not just where you came from, but like look at your morals and figure out where they came from. Because if you're going to adopt a whole bunch of morals, you should at least know where they necessarily came from and what philosophy they belong to or what religion they belong to.
Yeah, and this is always just a big difference, a big dichotomy of the way that you think about things, in that there's people that are outcome dependent, which is the majority of people, is that, I want to make things happen in a way that is most convenient to me. So I will change the rules around based on what is most convenient to my goals. Whereas ideally, you want to set up principles first of, in the same way that in last episode we talked about how Tolkien revealed a story, in that you want to have foundational truth in principles, and that everything is filtered through these lenses, and then what is the outcome is simply revealed, and you take that in a value-free way of just, oh, these are my principles, and this ends up making it to where an outcome that I didn't want to be happens to be the case, then you simply still accept that. Because if you are thinking outcome dependent, you have no principles. And then if you do have principles, then you have a consistency that you can always fall back on and always retreat to in a positive sense.
Yeah, I think when you have that, it's kind of a comfort zone in the sense that you really can have the moral high ground. I look at a lot of the things that are really problematic for our country today, debt-based economy being like a chief one. Me choosing to act on the principle of I won't engage in a debt-based economy, meaning I won't engage in anything that's going to be fractionally reserved or where the debt is greater than, the lendee, then in that case, I naturally have to live my life in less comfort than I could be. And if I was simply outcome oriented, I could just violate these things of conscience and go forward and live more comfortably. And so the comfort comes in the understanding of what I'm doing is based on a principle. And actually, it doesn't matter if the outcome is better for me or worse for me. Living by the principle means certain things are off limits. And I don't have to worry about, should I do this? Can I live with doing this? No, I can't, because it's against my principles.
Yeah.
And it makes life much, much simpler.
Yeah, because you will always, if you don't have a set of principles, always find a way to justify doing the bad thing. Whereas with what you're talking about with, usury, lending, interest on loans, is that financially speaking, if you have enough money to buy a house, you have $500,000 and you want to buy a $300,000 house, there's no reason, financially speaking, for you to ever just outright buy the house.
Right.
Because you're never going to get a $300,000 loan or $250,000 loan at the rate that you would have, and you would definitely be able to make your money back at a certain rate. So from a financial convenience sense, there's no reason for you to do that. So if you don't have any principle that I don't want to participate in the system whatsoever, then you'll always find a way to justify the bad thing. And so it's always important to not be somebody who is just led by the convenience, the comforts. I'll just say that as a straight up just net bad, is that you will always want to essentially cultivate your own destruction. And that is just something that seems to be kind of inherent to us, unless we are focusing on essentially having a set of principles and being guided by those, and then the results be what they may.
Yeah, because the reality is you can't stop if people are going to oppress you. I don't mean blanket statement, but I mean in certain ways. I can't make more money than I can reasonably make inside my own morals or inside of my principles. So I can't help that there's oppression in that. It's not on me. It's not my responsibility to make that outcome happen. And this is one of those things we've talked about where people of an older generation tend to look at the outcome and say, well, when I was your age, I had this, 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 and this. Why don't you have those things? You must be lazy. And the reality is, no, I'm just sticking to a set of principles. Even if you didn't have to violate the same principles, which most of them did, but even if you didn't have to, you would have to now if you were in my shoes. And I'm not going to. So then I'm not going to enter into that kind of thing. And it does help you live with a lot less regrets. And that's like kind of that carrot kind of concept of like, why should you do this? Oh, because there's a little carrot out there of like, you won't have regrets. But the reality is that all of society benefits from this, even if you don't live to see it. If you care about your children, you shouldn't be participating in anti-societal actions. One thing that I made a statement recently, just that, nothing I have belongs to me. It belongs to my children. I'm holding it in trust for them. And then they're being taught that they're going to hold it in trust for their children, and so on and so forth. This is the way things work. If the trees, and I'm going to sound real hippie here, if the earth is something we pass down generation and generation, why not wealth and all these other things? Like, I don't have this idea that when I'm old, I'm going to retire and have all of my things. I'm going to retire and live suckling at the teat of my very successful son, I hope. And he's going to be running all these things. And I just have to give wisdom and like help out and do what I can, the same way that he just helps and does what he can and helps me out now. The idea for retirement is not, I have all my stuff. It's, I don't own anything anymore. It's not my responsibility. It's out of my hands. It's in the hands of the people who it actually matters. The idea we have these days about inheritance is when people die, somebody's got to get their stuff, I guess. Whereas traditional and the true meaning of inheritance is when you are of age, you get your inheritance. So when my son is of age, he gets the stuff, not when I'm dead. That would make no sense at all, because now he's waiting around the best years of his life when he needs the things the most. I'm just hoarding them to myself. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because 10,000 would have been infinitely more valuable to me at 18 than 500,000 would mean to me at 35.
Yes.
It's just an infinitely order of magnitude difference, because just on the most basic level, like, oh, I can actually work something reasonable because I can actually get a car.
Yeah.
And these things to where you're cultivating and you're understanding that, these things are for your family, then you're not going to take the default convenience of society of, oh, these things are mine. These things are naturally convenient for me to just kind of keep for myself. And then I guess after I die, then I guess somebody has to have them. It's not my responsibility anymore. I would have just kept the money and spent it all. But I just didn't know when I was going to die.
That's I saw a camper one time. I was traveling across the States. I saw big old RV, and on the back end was a bumper sticker and said, "This is my kid's college fund." And it's just like, I mean, I don't believe in going to college, but what a selfish statement of like, yeah, I'm not going to send my kids to college. I'm just going to spend it on an RV so I can cruise around. Like, you can do what you want, but there are always consequences. And when you treat your children that way, you shouldn't be surprised when they don't want to have anything to do with you. And the reality is, I've yet to see anyone of the generation of maximum possession, by which I mean the boomers, actually hand over anything while they're alive in terms of like real value. Being like, here's my house, or here's this thing, or here's that. I've seen some dole out some amounts of money for inheritance for building this thing or building that thing. And those people, I respect them for doing that. But the reality is, you just don't see people being like, okay, sons or son, whichever, it's all yours now. Take it off. Take care of me and I'll do what I can to help. But I'm like a backseat character now. And I just can't think of anything better for retirement policy than being like, I'm 60 years old. I think I'll just let my kid take everything and I'll just hang out.
Yeah.
If I can still work, I'll go to work, bring in some money. But like, I'm in his household now.
Yeah, that's also a thing, is that, it's infinitely cheaper for you to just, borderline like rent a room out from your family than like trying to live in your own 3-bedroom house as, a couple that has all of the kids out of the nest. And then just going back to the point is that, grandpa's childcare is always like, oh, childcare is so expensive. We got to do all this, all that.
Yeah.
When it's like, you have a perfect example of somebody who should want to, interact with their grandkids. And then you have grandkids who need to be taken care of at certain points. And then it's a perfect match. But then it just kind of completely goes away because it's essentially worshiping at the altar of fun, of travel, when it's like,
independence.
Yeah. All the value in life is seeing the world, which is also another thing that kind of just comes from media, is that your life is determined by the amount of places that you go to and the amount of experiences that you have. Whereas the amount that you like to travel is inversely proportionate to how valuable your home life is.
Yeah. So one of my buddies got married quite young. And I've traveled a lot. I've been intercontinental, and I've been all over the United States. I've been everywhere. Not like everywhere, but I've been all over the place. And I would trade all of the traveling and the experiences to have started my family as early as he started his family.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't travel anywhere. He just stayed in his hometown.
Yeah.
And guess what? He does not have any downside when it comes to managing his family, managing his church, and managing himself compared to me having spent all that time traveling.
Yeah.
Like, it's just indistinguishable. He's not stupider. In fact, I would argue wiser, especially considering much younger and learning the lessons that I learned when I got married. He's learning them sooner in his life. He's able to adapt more to them than I am able to. It's like,
because he's also not learning the incorrect lessons.
Yes. Like, where's the value in all that travel if it just could have been started a little earlier? And that's something that people just don't think about. They think completely the reverse. They're like, oh, I settled down too soon. I never got to see the world. If that's your view, you're just a horrible person, because you're just saying I hate my family. And that's your fault. That's your fault.
Which is also talked about in media as the old ball and chain. It's always just everybody having animosity towards their family. Like, there's this one concept that at some point in, Disney Pixar movies, you can tell when it was written by people who go to therapy way too much. When, everything is about, my parents don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And the entire story is about, I'm going to prove them wrong. And the climax is, I proved them wrong. Now, there's no resolution.
You're just talking about Brave, right?
Never seen it. True. Yeah, absolutely about Brave.
I had to tap out on that movie. I was watching it on a flight, and sorry. So in the movie, the girl has a fight with her mother. So her mother's like, you should marry a good strong lord or whatever, and she's all like, I'm no bonny princess or something. It sounds like Shrek, basically.
Okay.
And so then she makes a wish that turns her mom into a bear.
Okay.
And then she finds out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And her reaction to finding out her mom is a bear, because her mom can't talk, right? She's signing this stuff. Her reaction is, good. Now I can talk to you and you can't talk back. And then
Yeah.
she continues to berate her mother for like 30, 40 minutes. It's like,
Mhm.
do you have any concept of the seriousness of your actions? Like,
Mhm.
this is a polymorph. Well, this isn't like
Yep. This isn't a small little thing.
this isn't equal to her being like, you should get married. Like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah. Which also, with that equivocation, it does make people think it is equivalent
Yes.
of, you know, this absolutely horrible thing that can happen to your relative versus, you know, I want you to like create nice things.
Yeah. I want you to do the thing that, you know, would be good for you.
Yeah. I want you to do the thing that every single generation in our entire history has done, which is the only reason that you exist.
Yeah, I want to touch on that just a little bit in terms of how selfish are people that are like, I don't want to have kids.
Mhm.
It's just unbelievable to me. The other aspect is how masochistic are you if you don't want to have kids?
Mhm.
It's like, how can you be so selfish and hate yourself so much?
Mhm.
Because there's so much fun, and then also everyone in your lineage before you bothered to have kids and invest time in rearing them and training them, bring them up, and you're just like, nah,
Mhm.
can't be bothered. Wow, how can you be the culmination of everything in your bloodline? Are you worth that?
Mhm.
Are you actually man enough? So important that, like, you know what, if your bloodline ends with you, it was all culminating in like this perfect gamer who just wanted to play video games, and then when he's 45 years old, he died of a heart attack because he ate like 7 pizzas or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's not a win.
Get a partner that you're with 20 years, not married, and then goes to Disneyland every year.
Yeah.
Not every year. Like, you have a Disneyland pass, and you live in the middle of the country, but you fly out to the Disney places, and that's where all of your money goes.
Yeah, instead of having children.
Yeah. Why would you have children? That makes your Disney experience worse.
It's true. Like, yeah, think about that. Going to kids. Going with kids to Disney sounds horrible. Why would you do that?
Yeah. Like, there's this one video of the theme park, like some new Disney theme park being opened, and you just see all of like the, you know, it's like one of those Black Friday things to where there's like the rope, and then it's like, all right, everybody goes, and it's just a horde of just like man children essentially. And it was also just such a funny video for me to just like watch people's gaits, because it's just looking a direct view of people walking backwards, and it's just the most dysgenic walking forms possible, where they're just like super duck feet, and just zero athleticism. Like, these people have just broken bodies, but they're, you know, soy jacking over, you know, Star Wars.
Okay, so here's the thing. You pick 6 people from the Disneyland Open for your Frisbee team, and you get 6 months to train them. And I will show up with 6 random dudes from the YMCA. And no training. We get just the day before, I'll pick 6 dudes from the YMCA.
Like, it would take years and years to detrain these people from their things, and still probably wouldn't work out. Like, it requires way too much time to be able to do that. But going back into something, it's really just fundamentally about the kind of people that are like, I don't want to have kids. I don't want to do these things. Going into a little bit of like an ideology point. A lot of these people are generally kind of like, lefty, anti-capitalism, all that stuff. But it's also, that is the ideology that you, as a capitalist, as a business guy, would want to have as the ultimate consumer.
Yes.
You want to, when you are taking on that ideology of, I double income, no kids, that kind of thing, where it's just all about just hedonism, consume, feel good, do these things. That is exactly what the business powers that be would want you to be. So in that sense, you're not enacting your ideology at all. If you are a communist, you explicitly would want to have kids. Like, that would be a direct follow through from that idea. Whereas ultimately, it's, you're either taking a path of consumption or creation, and you can not really have it both ways. Everything that you use that is built towards consumption goes away from creation. and you can enjoy things and it's still being about creation. Whereas if you as a father go out to Seattle to have a massage, to spend a week away from your family, and then you write a newsletter about it and have a man's group, then that is pure consumption.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas if you go to Seattle with your family and have a nice little spa trip, then that is creation. You are creating memories that will last for generations. You are creating a bond with your family that is making your family tighter. And you're taking that exact same thing that would be consumption, and then because you're using it in a different way, you're using it for the purpose of creation. And that's just ultimately, in so many ways, you would want to center your life around, how can I create value? How can I do my job to make the world a better place? And obviously, having kids, having a wife, is most efficacious way to do that, because ultimately you have the most control, power over that. Whereas, if you're trying to do it of like, oh, I'm going to be a teacher, then you're just, you're having less influence, even if you were good, but also you're ultimately fundamentally breaking apart families. In that, biblically, you are commanded to teach your children. So when you are assuming the fatherly role with other children, other kids, then you are, by definition, no matter what you're doing, acting in destruction.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way you can get around that. Just that the biblical portal for education also happens to be the most effective one, which is you are with your children and your children naturally learn from you and they want to do the things you do. It's also a really great art of self-reflection because my children want to do everything that I do. So if I'm doing something that I don't want them doing, probably shouldn't be doing it, actually, turns out. It's really good in the art of self-reflection. And when you're with them all the time, they pick up on things like you wouldn't believe. Whereas when they have scheduled times of learning all these people, they spend much, much less time learning and much more time trying to avoid learning and hang out with people who make them feel good. And so it's just a self-destructive system. And then there's the abdication that's going on where, as a father, I'm going to teach my children. And people will always say stuff like, oh, well, what about subjects I can't teach my children? There aren't any. That's just ridiculous. You want to be educated, go educate yourself. I don't care what level of math my kids get to. I'm going to be doing more math than them. That's just how it goes. And if you're that underqualified that you can't just teach someone basic, simple practices for life, you can't teach them how to be a human and how to, be compassionate, then you have been failed by the public school system, the same one you want me to send my kids to learn. Because ideally, your children would learn and be able to teach, because that's the highest level of proficiency in anything, is teaching it, right?
Yes. And this also goes into, for every point that we've ever brought up on any of these podcasts, you can always make the point from the most annoying, just like sniveling, conniving coward possible. And I'm going to argue against that person right now.
Good.
In that, somebody could look at, the story that probably fake, whatever, of just, Down syndrome dad, which, perfectly fine.
Happens.
And then, has a child, which eventually becomes a doctor. And then they would look at, oh, but that Down syndrome guy can't teach his kid, math. So therefore, we need to put everybody in public school.
Right.
And that's just the idea of, you can't build society around exceptions. Even if this is hypothetically a case where this is potentially valid for this father to outsource education on things that they don't know, you don't build things around this one little case to where this one person might slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, everybody is going to slip through the cracks, which does ultimately just follow through that public schooling is inherently a destructive system designed to destroy everybody, designed to abuse everybody.
In that regard, too, I think it's funny because when whenever there is someone who's special needs in the public school system, they always end up amending or changing the program in some way to suit that special needs kid. And so then the question is, well, if the program that benefits the special needs kid exists, why does it need to exist for other people in a totally different format? And then applying it to this situation here, this one person doesn't have anyone that can realistically train them in all these things. Well, is there no one else who could do this? Private tutors have always been a thing. And, I know what I just said about me raising my children, but I'm not actually opposed to tutors in terms of if you have specific things you want your children to learn that you can't teach them.
You don't know piano. And, you want your kid to know piano.
So then there's the person who could come to your house and teach them under your supervision. You are still in control of what's being taught, and you can also learn the subject as well. So it's like,
which goes back into the thing that we're talking about of like music and having somebody who is the coherent driver who is cultivating and curating everything, even though there is somebody else who is doing this other task of, teaching piano. It's ultimately happening under your purview, your supervision.
Yeah.
And if they're doing it in a way that you don't like, then you're just like, no, you're not teaching my kids.
Yeah, go next.
Yeah.
It's that simple, really. And so, I have not been recording any of these episodes with the thought towards the conniving, glasses-wearing individual. So I'm glad you brought that up, but I wasn't thinking about that.
I'm sorry to tell you that person exists.
It's okay. I don't read the comments.
Yeah.
So you can't hurt me.
Yep. That person doesn't need to exist.
Yeah, as far as I know, they don't exist.
Yeah. There's also, that just Reddit thread on the Tridimir main sub. It's just like oh, you guys remember Yasukeh? He just became a conspiracy theorist. Where it's like, bro, just?
You sent me that screenshot, and I read it as he only amounted to a conspiracy. Like you could have been so much more, but you're just a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
Which still fits with it, just because there's actually so much more to that. But it kind of shows how short-sighted League of Legends players are, just in the sense that this guy's doing this podcast. He used to be a great Tridimir main.
Yeah, no.
And he could have been so much more. Never mind the fact that I'm just going to call you out. You just legitimately helping people, changing lives, doing all this in-person work with a lot of different people. Some would call it coaching. Some might call it fitness coaching. I don't really know what you call it, but you're doing all these things to actually change people's lives that and that you're willing to, come out and do stuff. And then people on the internet will be like, yeah, but you used to be rank 1 Tryndamere or something.
Yeah. And now all of a sudden you're talking about, peeing on walls. It's legitimately something that was brought up as this guy talks about peeing on walls and meat. This is just the worst thing ever.
No. That was brought up as a countermeasure. Because the one person was like, oh, he just became a conspiracy theorist. Another guy was like,
oh, yeah.
No.
He was like, that it was just.
Yeah, and he was saying that back when you used to stream, someone was like, oh, you got to go get tips from this Tryndamere guy on how to play Tryndamere mid. And he tunes into your stream and you're talking about carnivore plus pee on wall.
Yeah.
So it's been in the works.
Yep. It definitely has been in the works. It's not just whatsoever.
Yeah.
And just speaking on that, abstractly, it's everything that led to the way that I interacted with League and the League community all comes from the exact same things that makes me a conspiratorial thinker.
Yeah.
The mid Tryndamere jungle invades. Mid Tryndamere didn't exist. That wasn't a thing. Jungle invading from mid was not a thing.
Really, from any lane?
Yeah, no.
These junglers do.
Yeah, these things don't exist. It is essentially a conspiracy to say that these things are actually viable ways of playing the game.
Yeah.
With the whole King of Land person, the whole Nice thing. Not a single person in the world believed that he never actually hit Challenger.
Yeah.
But the same ideas, the same thought processes that make me conspiracy this guy's crazy, are the exact same things that led me to do all that research, show that definitively this wasn't a thing. And the same sort of religious devotion that comes from everything else that we've been talking about was full on display in essentially every single aspect of that particular event.
I think it just goes to show that people don't really pay attention. I'm guilty of this. Sometimes you see personalities and you watch a bunch of their content, but you don't really know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you're really like listening to them really closely and reading between the lines, you oftentimes can't get the true gist of what they're trying to say or where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
It's super easy to just be like, oh, he's just like me, for real, for real.
Mm-hmm.
Usually that's not the case.
Yeah.
Especially with people who are more, shall we say, in the influencer space. They're never going to be just like you. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense in either direction. Simply that if they were like you, they'd be like you. We were talking about this just a few minutes ago, actually. I find this interesting. People that are like, I want to be a big time streamer. It's like, oh, who are you modeling your stream after? I don't watch streamers.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and that actually is the case for a lot of the people that did actually make it.
Yes.
And the people that did watch streams and are stream viewers almost never actually become streamers.
Exactly.
Because it's a completely different mindset from the person that watches streams to the person that actually creates something and cultivates something.
Yeah.
Whereas, so many people will, ask me for stream tips or something, and they're of the viewer variety, and I see them like, stream or try things out. And, I'll give these specific pieces of advice of just like, why would anybody watch you over literally anything else that they could be doing with their time? And it's just like, I don't know. Or like, like just super, super vague reasoning of, I'm just like, a chill gamer.
I think I'd be a likable person.
Yeah, yeah. And ultimately, it's just not understanding the fundamental thing that somebody who, wants to put something out there, somebody who wants to be real in the its sense, it comes from a first principle basis of, I feel like there is something that I want to put out into the world. I'm not thinking that, oh, I want to make a podcast for the sake of making a podcast, because that is vapid, nothing to it, and it will fail as something that is vapid and has nothing to it. Whereas when it comes from a first principle of, I think that as long as people are getting information through podcasts, then there is a lot of value that I can give in information through podcasts. So this is something that I'm also well equipped to do. So this is why I am doing this right now. It's why I'm being real.
Has it been real?
It is currently ongoing. The realness is currently ongoing.
So, just a thought about kind of how this goes. So, right, you have the person who exists in the moment, the person that's like, I want to be a streamer, or I want to do podcasts or whatever. They see a personality, they want what that person has, clout, whatever it is. And it's very interesting to me. There was some tapes, CDs back in the era where CDs were a thing. When my family would travel cross country, we would listen to these things called the basement tapes, which R.C. Sproul Jr. He produced these things, and it was, before the era of the podcast. And so what was happening was he was just like in his basement, and he'd invite some of his friends over, and they'd sit and talk, and they'd record it, put it on a CD, and they'd sell it to people. And they're talking about the practical application of like his father's teachings and things like this. It's like really cool stuff. But I remember at the time, when I was listening to those, not once did it enter my mind, I want to be like a basement tape guy. Because it's like, no, this is them. This is their thing. They have something to say, and they're sharing it with the world, compared to like what you're talking about, where people are like, oh, I want to be a podcaster. Well, what do you have to share? I'm really five crude jokes or something. Like,
yeah, first off, you have to cultivate something that is worthy of sharing.
Yes.
It's not, I want to be a podcaster. It's, I want to have something that is actually of value first. That is the first most important thing, is having the thing that is of value, and then you start to seek out the thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like we were talking about the landmine situation. if you can diffuse a landmine, what's the point in going and getting a college degree? Go to the minefield that actually has something worth getting there.
Mhm.
And this is kind of that same concept of like, if you can diffuse mines, you don't need to go to college. What you should do is share that with other people so that they can achieve the goals that they want, because there's other things that are guarded by these same landmines, whether that be the background radiation of the media in the modern aesthetic, or whether that be the religiosity and the inability to kind of distinguish between what is true religion and what is all these other things that are going on. And so many people can't really use the sword of truth to cut through these things and really see. And that's where the diffusing goes on. So just in a very broad sense, when you have that skill set, it kind of behooves you to find a way to share it. And it just so happens that right now in our time of history, podcasts are the way to get information out there.
Mhm.
And that just makes sense. That being said, any advice on how I should start a podcast?
You just gotta put in the hours. You gotta grind. You gotta just do it.
That's way too hard. That's
Yeah.
not happening. Thanks though.
Yeah, and this is the exact same thing that really happens not only just with, content creation, but anything where you're asking for somebody's witness. You're asking somebody to essentially share part of their life with you. When you are having somebody watch your podcast, like you are watching right now, I'm asking you to share part of your life force with us. And that is fundamentally what I'm asking of you. And the biggest ask that you could possibly do of somebody is be my wife. And so when somebody would say, I want a 9 out of 10 woman, not just in terms of looks, but overall package. And then it's like, okay, well, what do you have to offer to, maybe they have a particular person in mind. Then it's just, oh, what do you have to offer that is of value to this person that would justify this exchange? And if you don't have anything, then you either have to lower what you're asking of or just improve yourself. Have something that is worth being able to justify the demand of, oh, I'm going to get the 9 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way that works with asking for witness of a podcast or asking of a witness of, I want to see our great grandchildren. It is going to be the exact same thing either way.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you can get around that there is quite an interaction in the modern age in this kind of internet space.
Mm-hmm.
We touched on this. I think it might have been episode 2, talking about energy and how you can, siphon energy, and that energy can be used for a lot of different things. I think that it's very real, and you want to be careful who you give your energy and your time and your thought to.
Your witness.
Yes, exactly. And in this case, obviously, when there's something worthwhile, then it's a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
But there is so much, as we already discussed, in the background and sometimes in the immediate foreground that's trying to demand your witness. And so now flipping the script, if you're the 9 of 10, you need to be delineating from dirty, no money having losers without a drive, asking you to marry them. Or in this case, asking for your witness.
Mm-hmm.
If people are asking for your witness and they can't even be bothered to dress up,
mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah,
it's kind of a no-brainer.
When somebody is starting their stream and they don't have their audio of, the game that they're playing for an hour and a half, not even putting the most basic level of looking at that little line that's on OBS right there to make sure that the audio is actually working. If they're not willing to do that basic thing, then why would I give them my witness? Even though they demand it, they want it. They're not doing anything to justify it. They're not doing anything that actively makes me want to seek this out. And I feel like my life would be made worse when there is an opportunity to talk to somebody at some gathering and they are a person of value. I feel like if I missed having a conversation with a particular person, like I just didn't get around to having a conversation with them, I feel like I missed out. And that happens when I feel like this person, or have reason to believe that this person has a very high value for me to exchange with them my energy with theirs.
Yeah, I think there's so much to be said in terms of that kind of social connection. Streaming is such an interesting concept. We haven't really metastasized exactly how that impacts, but there's a social aspect to it, and a lot of people have talked about this before. Like the size of your viewer base changes how they can socialize, and different people are drawn specifically to different kinds of chat rooms based on the numbers. Excuse me. So I think when you look at that, you can readily tell kind of what people are expecting energy-wise and what their witness is worth. And there's a lot to be said over getting the right people to witness you, just in terms of getting that boost in the energy and being able to use that and then affect the world with it. So another aspect is simply not asking for witness from people who don't have anything to give. So I'm going back and forth here, right? There's the aspects of like you not giving your witness to people who deserve it. And there's also asking for witness, but you don't necessarily want to have, there's a certain kind of witness which is almost draining on you.
Yeah, this is something that you could kind of notice, or at least I notice when I go to gatherings, of just something that'll naturally happen either to me, or I'll notice that other people will have this kind of phenomena of, there's a certain particular amount of people in the group, and there's people that it's just like, I really want to get this point across to these people. And then there's a bunch of people that are just kind of there. They just exist. And, if the people that I really want to hear the point that I'm saying have to leave the group, they're getting called over for something, they have something else that is more important for them to attend to, then all of a sudden, I don't really feel like, spending another 30 minutes making the point that I would have otherwise made.
Right.
Because the witness from those particular people isn't as important. And I don't feel like I'm getting as much value out of it, which is also just in a sense of people are super willing to give their value over to them if you can be a valuable sort of springboard for it. So if you conduct yourself in a way that is very easy to talk to, very valuable to talk to, where people feel like, oh, this person is actually listening, I'm getting value, they're considering my ideas in a way that other people wouldn't. Other people would just nod along and just kind of not even remember the conversation 30 minutes later. This person is actually seriously considering my ideas. Then all of a sudden, people are going to be way more willing to talk to you and give their value to you.
Yeah, I think in terms of kind of elevating your social game to a degree, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but you want to be the person that people want to talk to, because that's going to give you the ability to get not just your thoughts across, but actually to be impactful in people's lives. When you are just waiting for your turn to proselytize to someone, people pick up on that really quickly, and it turns them off. They no longer want to talk to you. But if you can actually connect with someone, actually invoke kind of their passions, you get so much more mileage out of when you do say something. One thing I've kind of always had is just a desire for other people's passions. And it's something that once I quantified it, I was able to understand this is what makes a lot of people open up to me. I've always been considered very charismatic, maybe not to the degree that you are, but in that regard, it's because to a large degree, I simply have a passion for what other people are passionate about. So when people start talking about something, it doesn't matter if I don't understand it. I want to know, and I want to get everything I can out of these people, because it's so invigorating for me to hear them talk about stuff that they're passionate about. And the downside to that is that if someone isn't passionate about anything, I don't even want to talk to them. They're such a drain on me, because it's like they don't respect themselves enough to actually go and try and do something. They don't have a desire for anything. And that is so difficult for me to be around. But it goes both ways in that regard, that when you are listening to them, then they're going to be kind of excited to talk to you. And when you give a critique, or when you say, maybe it's actually this way or not that way, they're going to kind of be like, oh, well, that means a lot coming from the guy who seems to actually care about what I have to say.
Yeah. give a example in a generalized context, but you'll pick up on what I'm essentially saying is, person that I would consider to be very high value. I knew enough about them to know that, they care about a particular topic. And it was a topic that we had already done a podcast episode on.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to essentially bring up the thing that they are most passionate about and be able to get a lot of valuable conversation, a lot of valuable exchange from them because I was essentially speaking to something about that they were passionate about. And in that scenario, if I have something to say that might be, hey, I know you do things this way, like, here's a concern that I have about this, then that is taken as a serious point that's actually worth engaging on, and that my opinion is respected in that sense, and something that is actually worth engaging with, which is like the ultimate level of connection there. And so, yeah, in that sense, I was perfectly positioning myself to be somebody that was worth this person that I would consider to be very high status to consistently talk to. And that was just a very good example of these sort of principles bearing out.
Yeah, and I can now hear a certain glasses wearing individual being all like, "Why is this important? Why does it matter what people think about you?"
Mhm.
And it does. It matters what people think about you for a variety of reasons. Now, I'm not saying you should be governed by what people think about you, but it does matter. How you portray yourself, how you come across is who you are. A lot of what you are exists in the mind of other people. And if you think that's not true, then you've clearly never really done deep self-reflection on who you are and what people say about you. What people say about you will tell you a lot about yourself. And if people dislike you and they can't tell you why they dislike you, that also says a lot about them and about you. The reality is, it matters what people think. And there is such a thing as high status and low status. And it's important to position yourself in such a way where you can exist in those circles. There is a lot to be gained there, not simply in terms of like money or being involved in certain bougie deals or whatever, but in terms of your happiness. The people who are higher status have more ability to influence and to understand, which means they get more interactions per hour, so to speak. They're naturally going to have a few more hacks on how to do things. And you can learn a lot from them, how they operate, and bring up yourself. One of the aspects about life is we're all born into a certain kind of status. Whether you're born into a really like kind of dirt poor, crummy family, or you're born into, families with a little more money or broken home, whatever your situation is, you want to improve it. And you want to improve it by culturing yourself. And part of culturing yourself is understanding how people in higher situations handle themselves. And you can learn from that. You can adapt to that. And it also prepares you for if fortune should smile on you, if good things can happen to you, how to manage those good things. Whereas so many people will get put in a situation when they have the chance to manufacture and sustain relationships that would genuinely be really good for them. But because they don't know how to handle genuine relationships, they just let it all go away. Or they tend to offend or frustrate other people around them because they can't behave in a gracious manner because they never actually saw how other gracious people act, because they were not willing to get close to those people or to prejudice against them because they're, a high status or whatever.
Yeah, and a lot of people have that sort of talking about the normalization and the defense mechanisms that people have to sort of justify their own existence, is in the sense of people will often look at people that they intuitively understand to be higher status in one way, almost with a sort of like level of contempt.
Yeah.
Which goes into, the whole nerd versus jock dynamic of, the people that are successful and have the social life and are, captain of the football team, have all these great things going for them. They clearly must have all of these like secret negatives or all of these super, super bad things that are happening to them.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can just take them with earnesty and graciousness, then you can actually just gain a lot of value out of it if you are just humble enough to see that this person has value that they have to offer, and they have it in abundance. And it's so all I have to do is really just put in like 10% of the way, and they will give me the other 90%. But you actually have to set yourself up in a position to where you're getting past the hurdle of putting in that 10% and being able to say, hey, here's this thing that you are really good at, you're really competent at, you have shown success in. How can I get to that point?
Yeah. I think too many people do get caught up in the nerd versus jock dichotomy, just assuming that like, oh, well, if you're really athletic, you must be stupid or something. When that's only a very recent kind of phenotype that it's not really a phenotype, archetype, I guess, that appears in media, when the reality is throughout ages past, smart people have always been physically fit. And it's always been a great marker for mental health to be, well versed in how to move in your body and how to utilize, athletics to your advantage. So you shouldn't automatically be resentful of people like that. Instead, you should be looking at people and going, okay, well, is there some way I can improve myself or become better in that regard? And like we're talking about here in the terms of status, like learn to be gracious and learn to maybe hang out with that person more. And maybe they can actually teach you something that you didn't know, besides just them being like maybe physically more fit than you. Super common in the gym. Anyone who's been in the gym for any matter of time, a lot of times the guys who are really knowledgeable and are really kind are the biggest guys.
Yeah, this is one thing that when people go to the gym, they're always thinking, oh, I'm going to be judged by all of the people that are super fit. And these things aren't a natural thing for you to think. This is a thing that has been implanted into you through all of this abuse that you've gotten through Babylon. And like the purpose of this is for you to have contempt for these people and to naturally think that they wouldn't be able to provide value from you. And the only purpose of creating that is to separate that connection that you could get, which is ultimately just building everybody up. Whereas the more that I am able to talk to people about health and the more that people get healthy around me, I am not wasting away anything of me. I'm simply just building everything up to where it is a total net positive for everything in existence, for these people to be healthier, for these people to be better, for these, relationships to get better, because, these people are getting healthier and all of the like natural snowball effects that come from that.
Yeah. And I think when you build a strong community and you're at the center of it, so you can imagine a scenario where somebody is trying to improve their life. Let's say they have a David Goggins-esque moment. They suddenly want to get fit. They want to do something with their life. But obviously joining the military is not the right path. They go to the gym, they start like working out, and improving your social circle is kind of the first step. So I don't mean like cutting off all your friends, but what if instead you can be the light bringer, so to speak, to your friends? You can talk to some of these other guys at the gym and start hanging out with them and figure it out. And then you can go to your friends and you can talk to them. There was someone who did this to me back when I was in my gaming arc in the pre-Yasukeh days. One of the guys in my group was like, I'm tired of being like kind of pudgy and looking like I walk. He was an artist. And he's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come up with a gym routine. He bought himself some adjustable weight dumbbell stuff, just started doing stuff at home, plus, some high intensity stuff. And after like 3 or 4 months, he's like, guys, look at the results. Like, I'm really doing well. He's sticking to a diet and he's hitting these weights. And he then, like, all his me and a bunch of other buddies like, hey, let's get on the train. Let's like figure this out. And he's helping us with just beginner stuff. He himself being a beginner, but just being on level 2, he can help everyone else who's level 1. And that's where I first figured out like, oh, I should be working out. Because he was telling me, he's like, well, you should do this or you should try that. And it genuinely jump started kind of my thought process into like, oh, maybe I should be physically fit. I shouldn't just be a gamer. And you can do that for your circles. And I still talk to this guy to this day. Some of those people kind of got pushed away by that. Some of those people in our friend group were kind of pushed away by the fact that he was like, hey, being fit is actually something that is good for you. It makes everything better in life. You should do this. Some people were just like, no. And those people drift away. And this is what I mean when I say improving your circle. He didn't drive anyone away from him. But the reality is anyone who's that resistant and that, I don't want to say passive aggressive, but that resistant to that kind of a change, it may be better that they go their separate ways. And it doesn't have to be a big explosion of a friend group. These people just over time kind of move themselves away from this guy, because the reality is they're unable to be gracious and admit that this guy actually changed his life. This guy actually changed things around. And so in that respect, that is something people can do, and you can do that, but you have to recognize and be gracious yourself and learn from other people a lot of times if you're a beginner. And that is where kind of in all different arenas, you have different people of different status levels. We all recognize we go to the gym and you see a really big guy surrounded by like 4 or 5 other guys. That's a high status guy because like everyone wants to learn from him. You shouldn't be afraid. He clearly wants to teach people. Like you should be like, okay, well then let me get some of that clout, because those dudes that are hanging around with him are higher status than you are because they're hanging around with that guy. And you can transpose this to anything, any social setting. You can look and be like, oh, there's a person of high status. They're probably not going to be an a-hole. It could be. People are mean. But generally speaking, it's worth it to take the time and try to figure that out, because you can bring some of that back to your own friend group. You can be an ambassador of sorts. And again, improving your own social circle and bringing up the people around you is a total net positive for you and your community, and has lifelong benefits, provided you're not one of those people that just like moves every 2 years.
And this is also just in the sense of going back to what you were saying about your friend who started working out, is that the best way that you can change people is by actually just revealing it through your own life and the actual outcomes that you've experienced. To where if you just see the idea and then you just immediately start saying, you guys got to work out on their first week, and oh, you guys are so horrible for not working out, when you're in your first week, you haven't gotten any results, you have nothing to actually show for it. It comes off as very fake and very not humble, and in a place to where it's, I don't want to learn from this person. This person's just, making me feel bad. Whereas if you are taking that in that sense of, oh, I'm somebody who's getting physically fit in my group, and I'm just naturally wanting to bring this to my community, and then you're not doing it in a very judgmental way, then that's going to be the best way to get the people who would potentially hear your message to actually hear your message and follow through on it. And then it's in a way to where, with the people that don't want to do that, then you can maybe still maintain the relationship, but then have it in a way that is more further apart, but still actually maintaining that, because you don't need to have the exact same relationship that you have with everybody for every single stage of your life. Especially when it comes to when you are improving and going into a particular place. I have seen just a lot of examples of this, of, somebody getting so many things in their life way better, way more physically fit, way more this, way more that. And then, people who are essentially the same person that they were 10 years ago. And there's just a natural drift that happens. And it doesn't need to be some big blow up, as you said. It just will happen when you are increasing your value according to where your principles stand, that people will you will change the relationship that you have with other people. And it also just will come to naturally gravitating around people that are more beneficial to you for the goals that you have actually set for yourself. When you are somebody who does take the steps towards improving to a higher ideal that you see as this is the type of person that I want to be. And when you actually take the steps of, oh, I'm going to go to places where these people are at and I'm going to go talk to them, then it's so trivially easy to find these people because everybody wants to have that human connection. Everybody wants to find like-minded people. And it's only that, Babylon media apparatus that separates people and makes it to where people don't actually have the opportunity to do that. And when you recognize that people are being separated by these things that just don't need to be the case, to where it is okay to just walk up to somebody and talk to them, then you can be the person to break that. And then all of a sudden you can be the cultivation for an entirely new friend group that is all people that are just fundamentally building each other up.
Yeah. I think the biggest kind of win you can get away with too is going from being a member of a group that maybe is leaderless and kind of directionless, to potentially being that tentative leader, to being someone who guides people. The respect you get when you're improving your life from people who are genuine is pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
When they see you improving their life or improving your life, there's a natural level of respect that flows into that. And you get the ability to kind of direct the group in more successful ways. And so if you're looking to improve things, you have to improve yourself somehow. Physical fitness is a really obvious one because of how physically we're attacked these days.
Mm-hmm.
Almost nobody is where they want to be physically compared to maybe 60 years ago, where basically everyone would say they're very happy with how they are physically. Nowadays, the satisfaction with the physical body, not just appearance, but also function, is really low. And so that's a big one. But there are other areas too where people can be improving. If you've ever been in a group of heavy drinkers and tried to suggest that maybe take a break from drinking really heavily, there's two responses. Either you're out of the group or everyone's like, okay, this is our new king. It's going to lead us to sobriety. Like this is a big kind of reaction. The same happens when you improve yourself basically in any way. People look at you and their reaction is either basically like, how dare you improve yourself? In which case they just self-select kind of out, or the response is, wow, he's doing it. Okay.
Somebody who is like me, friend group of gamers, is somebody who's like, all right, get serious, gets in shape, gets to a certain point in their career, and then, gets a wife, gets kids. And then, that husband and wife is just like, oh, how can I get the people around me to all of a sudden have wife and kids? And that's something that, these people obviously want, but then they don't have a leader that's actually trying to push them towards these things. And when they actually do get that, you'll either have the reaction of complete exile from that, you're not part of the gaming religion.
Right.
And then
third rail.
Yeah, third rail. It's a third rail topic to say that, maybe like stop playing 20 games a league a day. You will not find your wife in solo queue.
Well, statistics show.
Yeah. And then so, when you're in the situation of, oh, you're getting to this thing, then all of a sudden it's like oh, these people are pushing me to be great, but they're also doing it in a way that they're actively trying to support me. Yeah. Of like, hey, what about this woman? What about this woman? What about this woman? And then I'm just like, she's nice.
We've explained that one on stream or no?
I think we have explained.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
We have explained that. Yeah, she's nice. She's nice. But
now I can't say that people are nice. You ruined.
Yeah.
That's a nice person for me, which is fine because nice really means naive, and I don't need naive people.
Yeah,
which you're like the most naive person. You're just a little sparrow.
Yeah, I'm a little sensitive young man, a little innocent dove.
That's the one
that just needs to be shielding myself from all of the ills of Babylon.
Didn't know that people like lie to him.
Yeah, it's so uncomfortable knowing the fact that people lie, and this just Every single time it happens, it's just like I'm the first. It's the first time over and over and over again. In the same way that daylight savings time, I don't know if I would never get over that. I don't think I have the capability of getting over that daylight savings time exists.
Yeah, because you knew it existed, right? You were aware.
Yeah.
But once you experience, it's kind of, I don't want to be too graphic. It's kind of like graped.
Yes.
You can know what it is, and then you can know what it is, and it's just don't want to get one shot by daylight savings.
Yes. Which still, just like last week's episode, I'm still one shot by daylight savings time.
Yeah,
it's so over.
It's never gonna be. It's never gonna be back.
So, daylight savings time, it's very fake. It completely destroys everything. Unbelief. This is the podcast that we've been talking about with the idea of just everybody being religious, and people have the religious view that daylight savings time is something that we must adhere to.
Right.
And that is just super, super fake. And in any case, we don't want to be with the fake.
No.
We want to be with people that improve our lives, with people that provide value to us, with people that are real. And in that sense, it's been real.
It's been real.